all you need to do is set an intention. Like, that's it. And that is the key. And I was like, oh, okay. And it really hit me in that moment, even after all of the reading and teaching that I had consumed. I was like, oh, and it really put the power back with me. And I think that's what I had been lacking in that season of my life. And I think that's what intention for me why it's been so powerful. And so whether it's to start the day before a conversation, before we do an interview with Almost 30, before we have a phone call with a potential publisher, partner, what have you, we are always setting intentions.
Hi, I'm Lauren Vaknine, and you're listening to the Reconditioned podcast. I created this podcast following my journey from severe disability since infancy to complete wellness as a way to share my passion of healing the whole self. Because I learned in my own journey to wellness and through my 2 decades in the wellness industry that it makes no difference what you're here to heal. It all requires the same whole person approach. We tackle everything from trauma, health optimization, and neuroplasticity to manifestation, holistic parenting, and everything in between to help you create an optimized life of well-being, abundance, self-mastery, and purpose. You're not meant to live a life of stagnation, and you're not meant to be just fine. So hang around and let me help you recondition your life back to wholeness. Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited for you to hear this episode that I've just recorded with Krista and Lindsey from the Almost 30 podcast. If you haven't listened to their podcast, it's great. It's like just covers everything within spirituality and wellness. And I was so excited to talk to them because I love what they do. And I've kind of watched their evolution from when they started this podcast, which was the transition period between their 20s and 30s, which is why it's called Almost 30. And so it went so much deeper. I mean, I knew it would go deep because these are deep girls, like who have done a lot of inner growth work. But what we did was take it to places that when you guys listen to this, you're going to feel so supported in so many topics and so many areas of your lives. So we spoke about the Saturn return and that time kind of between your 20s and 30s where you are pushed towards this energetic death and this shedding and so many changes that so many of us feel around that time. And within that, we then went on to kind of the shedding of friendships, the evolution of friendships, what it means when you're being forced to kind of move out of friendships that are no longer serving you, even if that's really hard. And the same with relationships, leaving relationships that might feel safe, but you know in your heart aren't right, and what that means for your spiritual evolution. And we went deep into energetic deaths and the ego death and what that actually means. And we spoke about running a business intentionally. And everything kind of within relationships, and the girls speak to that from their own experience, and generally kind of the spiritual evolution and what that means when you're coming to this work and you're starting on this spiritual growth journey, and kind of the trajectory of that and the things you have to let go of, the things you have to start, the things you have to end, and kind of how to fulfill yourself on that journey. And we also spoke about the power of intention, which kind of solidifies and brings everything, all of it together. And we also touched on Krista went to a darkness retreat where you're in complete, utter, pitch black darkness for 3 to 5 days. And so that was incredible to hear about. Honestly, these girls are so nice to talk to. They're so fun and easy, but also so knowledgeable and deep. And you can see that they've truly done the work and they're trying to come from this place of real, honest intention and integrity. And I love that. And I could have spoken to them for so long. So you're going to love this episode, and episode 111, it's special if you're into numerology, which I am, and it's the last episode of the season as well. I'm going to be taking a little short break just so I can recalibrate myself and my business and the podcast and my children and all the things in my life that sometimes need a bit of time for me to focus on, because everything is so busy and so full on all the time. But before I leave you with that, don't forget that the Uncover Your Purpose Challenge is back very soon. It is back on the 27th of March. So like it was last time, but this time it's even bigger, even better. For those of you who took part last time, you'll know it was amazing. For those who didn't, if you're new here, the Uncover Your Purpose Challenge is something I run 3 times a year. It is a masterclass that runs over 3 days. All you have to do is dedicate 30 minutes of time per day to it. And it's completely free for you to enter. You just have to decide to dedicate the 30 minutes per day. And it's all about uncovering your purpose. And we go into identity and shadow and manifestation and everything that allows a woman to truly move out of that place of being stuck and unhappy and into her true authentic purpose. So like I said, it's completely free. All you have to do is just go to the show notes of this episode and click on the link there to register your spot. If you can't make each one of them live, you can watch the replays. That's also okay. Obviously, try and come to them live at the end on the Thursday, which is day 4. So each of the 3 days we're meeting at 12:30, but on the Thursday we're meeting at 7:30 p.m. UK time. And on the Thursday, I will announce the winners, because if you take part in the challenge, you have a chance to win a scholarship place on the Recondition Your Life Academy, which opens for enrollment that night, the Thursday night, as well as loads of other amazing prizes. Last year, the women were so overwhelmed with all the prizes that I gave away. So it's super exciting. So please do get involved, register your spot. It's completely free and it is super expansive. So that is all my news, and we will be back in April with a new incredible season with some incredible guests that I've got lined up. And I'm still over on Instagram all the time, so you can come and catch me there. And I'm on the TikTok now as well, if you want to find me. So thank you for being here. And here are Krista and Lindsey. Something that's always been a challenge for me, and I know it is for most people I speak to, is fitting in time for all the spiritual and self-development practices I want to do. You know, I want to meditate, and I want to do breath work and yoga, and I want to walk in nature and connect with my guides, and, you know, all the things. I want to do all the things every day, but I'm a mum and I run a business and, you know, yada, yada. And even as someone who really does put this stuff first, it's pretty impossible to fit it all in. So the one thing that really has helped me over the past year is the Sensei. It's a piece of health tech that fits in the palm of your hand, and it basically sends infrasonic waves through the chest to activate the vagus nerve and calm the autonomic nervous system. And you use it while playing the specially composed audio within the app, which is gorgeous. Really, it's pretty genius. The whole thing's pretty genius. And honestly, at the moment, with my days being more full on than they've ever been, since my kids starting a school that's quite far away and me being in the car so much, using the Sensei is the one thing I know will work on so many aspects of my well-being all at once. So even if I haven't had time to do any other practices during the day, I lie down at night and I use the Sensei for 10 to 20 minutes before I sleep, and it reduces cortisol levels, so that's going to be good for my immune system. It calms my brainwave state, so I know I'm going to get good optimized sleep. It calms anxiety, and because of how it activates the vagus nerve, it also deepens the meditation that I can do at that point. So I can kind of do all that in one go and lose that overwhelm of, oh my God, I haven't done enough today when it comes to my self-development and spiritual practice. And I also take it with me everywhere I go. So if I've got 10 minutes in the car while I'm waiting for the school gates to open, I can just do it then without the pressure of knowing that meditation would probably be a bit challenging for me in that state to transition into it when I'm probably in heightened brainwave states at that moment. So for me, generally, it's been pretty life-changing. And if what I spoke about resonates with you, you can get £30 off the Sensei by visiting getsensate.com and using code Lauren30. So that's getsensate, getsensate.com, Lauren30. Krista Williams and Lindsey Simcik are the hosts of the hugely successful Almost 30 podcast, which was hailed by iHeartRadio as the best wellness podcast and best spirituality podcast. Krista and Lindsey are impactful founders, spiritual leaders, and creatives. They lead heart-centered, real, raw, and insightful conversations on everything from modern spirituality to health and wellness, aliens to entrepreneurship, and mental health to self-development. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. We're excited to be here. Always love hearing our bio. I'm like, oh, we should update.
I know. Or I'm always like, what version is that? Because there's like a different bio every few months. Like, sometimes we're like, it's just changes all the time. So when you're reading, I'm always like waiting on bated breath. Like, what is in that bio?
I know. And I always think like when I write a bio for something specific, and like, you've got your kind of all your blurbs and your team know where they are. And then you don't go back and you write it and you're like, yeah, this sounds really good. And then they use it for something, you come back to it, you're like, no, I need to update that. But like a month ago, you thought it was great. Never mind.
100%.
To us listening, it sounds great.
The online world, I feel like that happens all the time. You do a new website and you're like, a year later, you're like, I'm sick of this.
Totally.
Next,
I think that with like photos.
Bio. Yes.
Anytime I take photos, I'm like the day I'm like, these are amazing. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, ugh.
Right. Like when you're doing brand photos and then you just constantly need new ones. Like people who like family members who really aren't kind of in the online world at all. They're like, why do you need another shoot? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just so sick of the old photos.
Yes. And I look different. I feel different. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's evolution, isn't it? And I think like as you evolve emotionally, spiritually, you kind of need to reflect that in any images you're putting out to the world.
Very true.
100%.
So I always start the podcast by asking the same question, which is, what have you done so far today to support your wellness? So Krista, I'll go with you first, and then we'll go with Lindsay, and then we'll get into all the good stuff.
Today, to support my wellness, let's see. I went on a walk, like a good long walk, and I talked to a friend, which was really nice. So I got out in nature by the water, and I was going to do it solo and just kind of like cruise in my own thoughts, but I had a friend call. So it was connection with myself for a little bit, walking alone, and then connection with someone I love, and then connection in nature, which is so important to me. And walking is such a huge part of my life. Lindsay and I go on walks all the time. I know Lindsay, it's a huge part of her life too. And I think walking's been something that has been really transformational for my mind, body, and soul, and is something that's really accessible to people. So highly recommend walking as like a spiritual practice, a physical practice, just incorporating it in your day.
Absolutely. I'm exactly like walking is my biggest. I actually did an Instagram story about it yesterday. I did this whole thing about, sometimes you have that feeling of overwhelm of all the things you need to be doing for your spiritual and growth practice. And it's like so many things. And I'm a mom, and a lot of my audience are moms. And a lot of my clients will go to me, I don't know what to choose. Like there's too many things and I want to do it all. And I was walking in the woods. I walk in the woods most days. And I just did this video before I kind of put my phone away and was like, do you know what? Today, I don't have time to do anything else. I will do breath work before I go to bed because that's my absolute non-negotiable. I don't have time to do anything else, but I'm in the woods, walking in nature. That is a meditation in itself. Hugged a tree, spoke to a tree. There were some pigs. I spoke to the pigs. That's a meditation. Like that's enough some days,
Yeah, you're speaking my language. Talking to plants, talking to trees, like is my jam. And, there's a lot of research around the benefits of forest bathing. So the Japanese call it forest bathing, which is walking in nature. So us people in the city, it can be really powerful to get outside, of course, when you're living in places like LA or New York or Chicago. But there's a lot of research around actually being in nature and the benefits for your mind and body of walking amongst trees.
Yeah. Well, the Japanese have it as part of their, they have something in their health insurance that allows people to like leave work to go forest bathing or something.
Yeah, they do it right.
They do. Lindsay, what about you?
This morning, I woke up and I have like a huge kind of obnoxious, disorganized pile of books next to my bed. And I usually choose like 2 or 3 and I just take them to my couch and I'll read like a few pages of each. Usually it's like, one spiritual, one is fiction, and then one is like more health-based. And I just lately, it's been nice to just consume in that way, just learn something by my own choice rather than consuming on Instagram and being bombarded with things that I don't even know are coming at me. And then I went and did a group workout, which was fun. And I was feeling like super energized. So it was nice to just kind of feel that like strength. And then being with people is always nice. I really enjoy a group workout. It motivates me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling good.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. So for anyone who hasn't heard of you guys and your amazing podcast, which I'm sure a lot of people have because it's huge and it's brilliant. The reason I wanted to chat to you guys is because your journeys, and I'm talking about your personal journeys and your journey within your businesses and the podcast, have been really interesting and very expansive to watch as someone who's kind of listened to your podcast for quite a while. And I think for anyone kind of embarking on a spiritual or growth journey now, I think it's really expansive to hear about how it went for you guys. And I was saying to Krista when we came on before we started recording, the thing I love about Almost 30 is it's not niche. Like it covers a lot. And that's what Reconditioned does. I wanted a hub for all things wellness and growth and not just niche topics within that. So I want to start with kind of what's the mission of your work and of Almost 30, and how has it changed to when you started, and what's the trajectory of that been like? That's like 7 questions in one.
No. It was good. Sometimes Lindsey and I are just kind of like, okay, who's got this one?
Psychically.
Yeah, psychically. We're like kind of like thinking about each other's answers and what the answers are going to be. So the mission of Almost 30 is to support people in their conscious evolution and to help them feel less alone. So Lindsey and I started the podcast at a moment where we felt really lost in our journeys. We felt like, we didn't know a lot of answers to really big questions, and we didn't feel like we were living a life that we loved. We didn't feel like we were living an expansive, full, rich, joyful, peaceful life. We kind of felt like we were living lives that maybe our parents had wanted us to live, or maybe society had wanted us to live. And we wanted to go further than that. And our connection was so special and magical when we met. We just became really fast friends, and it felt like we were almost dating. We started recording on our closet floors, and it was like this beautiful exploratory conversation that it feels like sometimes when you're dating, you're like, oh my gosh, that story about you, or this thing about you, or this thing about me that you're bringing up. And through the years, it's, stayed the same pretty much. We've covered so many different topics and so many different themes and ideas, but we really wanted to keep that foundation of helping people feel less alone and supporting them in their conscious evolution. And we realize now that that's the Saturn return. And that is the time in your 20s to your 30s where your prefrontal cortex is coming online. You're really developing a sense of self that's going to stand with you and be with you for the rest of your life. And around the niche thing, that's something that I'm so grateful you mentioned, because I think there's a part of me that is kind of like, oh my gosh, we should be more niche. We should be, I think we're always kind of looking at grass is always greener. So sometimes I see my friends who are so successful in niches and I get a little jealous. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I just was a niche person, if we just were niche people, we would be so successful. And you kind of look at everyone else as having the answer or having the path or having the way. And we always have to remember that, our blueprint is something that's the most important. And Carl Jung always talks about how if the path is clear, then it's someone else's blueprint. And for us, we always wanted to create a path and blueprint that was unique to us and that we could really create and follow on our own. And that's been really beautiful and given us so much success and depth of our relationship and our team and impact. But it's also meant it's hard. It's also meant that we had to pave a way for creating sort of a lane for women to get paid to podcast, or women to get paid to be themselves, or women to get paid to be in community with other women. And, we have our community of Almost 30 that really formed around us without our intention of it forming. And that was another thing that really made us different along this path of wanting to help people feel less alone, meant that we had a community of women that feel less alone in their journey. So it's been really, really beautiful. And it's also had really hard moments, but I'm so grateful that Lindsey and I have each other through it all to support, ourselves in this really beautiful, wild path that we're on.
What have been some of those hard moments? And also, do you argue ever? Do you have differences of opinion?
Yeah, so I'll answer that second question first. It's so nice. I think our friendship has served as, a practice ground and really for me, a modeling of the type of friendship that I want to have. So we have been supported through the years by therapists and coaches in order to connect and communicate in the best way we can, in order to both feel seen and heard, and then also see and hear the other person. So I really, I'm so thankful that, we have those skills, and also the awareness. I think awareness is so key in an intimate relationship like this, whether it's friendship, family, or romantic. And I have an awareness of what I'm bringing to conversations, whether it's like my limiting beliefs, or maybe I have a preconceived notion of how it should go or how it can't go. And I just both of us have that awareness. And so we're able to speak to that in conversation without it running the conversation unconsciously. So we don't really fight. We've had our moments. We've had definitely seasons of just discomfort and tension because things weren't being spoken. But once we were able to communicate clearly and from our hearts, just everything opened up. And it's just been really, really great. Almost 30 to us is like her own energy, her own entity. And oftentimes she will give us, nudges or signs that it's time to up level. And oftentimes that means that parts of us have to dissolve or kind of die, or parts of the business. And that's hard, like as much as we this recently, we're not always so open to change and what that really means. So it's really important that we lean in together to the call for change. And oftentimes we balance the experience out. If Krista has more fears about something, oftentimes I kind of take the role of being more rooted in like the vision, and vice versa. So it's those moments of growth, and that we know we're going to be incredibly expansive. Those end up being in the moment like really challenging.
I love that. And it kind of, first of all, I love that you've had therapy together. That's amazing. I think when you're on a growth journey, both of you, and, from the things that you speak about on your podcast, you've gone deep into your growth and your growth journey, your spiritual evolution. When you're doing that alongside someone, it makes it so much easier than, like, I know with my husband, it took him a long time to come to it, but he's on the same journey now. And so we speak in the same language. Like if we have an argument, we'll talk about where that's coming from in his shadow or mine, or why that's triggering us. Or he'll go, okay, I'm just going to go, let's do a breath work together. And then I'm going to go and journal. And we have the same terminology. We can talk in the same language. And I think it's so hard if you're in one place and someone, because we're all completely different, right? You're going to have different makeups and different ways of different horoscopes and human design and all of that. That's going to make you so different. But essentially, if you're speaking the same language, you get to understand someone from their own perspective and be able to integrate that into making that work in business and relationships and whatever it is. So it seems to me that just because you're both on that deep spiritual evolution, that growth journey, it makes it so much easier for you to have that comfortable exchange in the discomfort.
Yeah, I would say that's really true. And what I would also say for people listening is that being on that journey doesn't also mean that the other person's going to be on that journey either. So it's really beautiful that Lindsey and I have met each other along the way. Maybe there's moments where she's a little bit further than me. I need to catch up. She needs to catch up. I need to catch up. But I've also had relationships where being on that journey actually doesn't bring more closeness. It actually doesn't bring, the relationship forward. So for anyone listening, you have to be focused firstly on your path and your evolution and your growth, and trust that the people that are meant to grow with you will grow with you and will be with you alongside the journey. And I'm so grateful that Lindsey and I have been able to grow, in a way that's just given us more depth and given us more intimacy and given us more freedom and given us more sovereignty even. But I just have to say that a lot of relationships can't survive that. They won't be able to survive that. And prioritizing your own path should be number one. And that's not selfish. it's in the best interest of all. Because if you're not prioritizing your own path, then you're going to be inauthentic to yourself, which doesn't serve anyone else.
And I guess you're speaking to that with quite recent experience in your own life, right?
Yeah.
Has that been like an energetic death for you right now, letting go?
Yeah. So we're talking about my separation from my partner of 10 years. And that has felt like, yes, I wouldn't say, I think it's been very slow and long and incredibly painful for a while, but now incredibly liberating and expansive and gracious and, graceful. So it hasn't felt like a death per se. It's felt like a transformation because we're still friends and we're still super cordial and we're still really cool and we're still the parents to 2 cats. And so it's something I never thought would be possible, but I'm really grateful that I've had this experience of a true conscious uncoupling where we have been in support of each other's highest growth and expansion, which means that we're not going to be on the same path together as partners. So I do have very, very good experience with it. And saying that, it sounds all beautiful and it sounds like sunshine and rainbows, which it's been really nice, but it took a long time to get there. It took a long time for me to release expectations I had of someone, of him to be something that I wanted him to be, and for me to be something he wanted me to be. And it was really painful. But we were both out of our authenticity by having those expectations and by really trying to pull each other out of our authentic way of being to still stay together. And once we were able to release that expectation and that hope and that desire and that gripping, we were able to be much better humans, even though it meant that we were both on our own.
Yeah, so much in there. I think, a lot of women I speak to are in these kind of relationships and not necessarily abusive, but it's run its course. It's had its day. And there's the fear in leaving, right? The fear of the unknown. This is safe. And I've always found in my life, through any kind of big transformation in my life, it has had to be an energetic death. It has had to be a big shedding process. And it's almost really hard to kind of advise someone on that because everyone has to come to it in their own time, right? And for some people, it's not their journey. For some people, actually, in this lifetime, maybe they are meant to have that life of settling and they're meant to learn from that in the next life. But do you have any advice? And Lindsey, I know also you speak a lot about the sacredness of being single. So do you have any advice for that woman, the woman who's in the marriage or relationship that's turned stagnant? There's no like ill feeling, the guy's not treating her badly, or there's nothing there anymore. Like, what would you say to that?
I'll let Krista speak first and then I can speak on sacredness.
So what I would first say is that you have to be in your own process and you have to allow yourself to go through whatever it is you're going through. And you have to feel like you're ready to make the decision that you're going to make, whether that's to fully commit or whether that's to leave. And I think so many of us have this fake clarity that we either give ourselves or that we want, rather than really allowing ourselves to have honest confusion. And I think for a long time that I was in confusion. It was months and months of confusion, true, honest confusion. Maybe there was a kernel of knowing, but it was really honest confusion of what is mine, what is theirs, what is meant for my growth, what is unaligned, and what is just hard about relationships. And I had to explore all of that. And so allowing yourself to be in a phase of honest confusion and be an exploration of what is happening. Why is this showing up for you? What are the lessons that are here for you? What can you not bring with you to another relationship? I was using the last 6 months or even year of my relationship as this foundation or as this playground for all of the things that I was bringing to the relationship, which was codependency, which was control, which was, these different aspects of what I had brought to create the situation that I was in. How can I take radical responsibility for that and really look at this like, what is here for me? What has been created for me? So use it as that, use it as the foundation for your growth. And then also, I think there's a lot of people that do stay in relationships because they have a lot of fear and because maybe they're afraid of the unknown or maybe they're afraid of starting over. But what I know and what has really landed for me in my heart is that doing hard things that are aligned for your soul and listening to the call of your soul is the best feeling in the world. There's nothing better in the world, truly. Even if your call is to be a mother, answering that call to be a mother and then being able to have a child, or answering the call to start a business, or answering the call to whatever. It's just like the most liberating feeling. And it really has given me so much clarity, because I don't care what anyone else says or how anyone else feels. I don't care if I never meet someone else. I don't care if I, do whatever. I know that I made the best decision for me and the best decision for him. And as the last thing I would say is that a lot of times women are in this phase and feeling, and I think that we overlook how much the other partner could be feeling. And in my case, I sort of, led a lot of our journey, but I also realized that my partner felt very similarly to me, but couldn't express it, or didn't have the courage, or, might have been scared. So I would say that oftentimes when women feel this way, when we feel like we're not getting our needs met, or we feel like we're not being fulfilled, or we feel like there's less vitality and energy in a relationship than we desire or want, I think that the partners oftentimes are feeling something too. And so kind of taking the pressure off for you being the person that's going to have to, lead a conversation that you might not feel like it's well received. Oftentimes both parties have some feeling that something is off, and there's an opportunity for both of you there to really step forward, to step in, to lean in, or to make changes that potentially could lead you to, exploring what life would be like outside of the relationship.
If you've been listening for a while, you'll know about the Recondition Your Life Academy. It's everything you hear about on this podcast and more. Complete holistic healing and integration, but condensed into an online course format so that women can have everything they need to heal, find their purpose, and align themselves on their spiritual development all in one place. That was the purpose of it. Now, I only open the Academy for enrollment 3 times a year, and it's about to launch on the 30th of March. So I wanted to give listeners a little heads up. Inside the Academy, you'll have access to modules that cover everything from inner child healing, shadow work, trauma healing, self-love, divine feminine, ancestral healing, brain training, female hormone optimization, purpose coaching, meditation training. I mean, this is just a snippet of what you'll get, all alongside the inner circle of fellow Academy members. Now, you don't have to be overwhelmed by the amount of content I just mentioned. You will have lifetime access to everything, so you can get to whichever part you want to whenever you feel called to do so. And this includes bonus modules, guest lessons, meditations, downloads, audios. I mean, everything you can imagine to help you on your healing and growth journey. All you need to know is that if you are looking to heal, and that means heal from anything, right? So negative thought patterns, trauma, relationships, physical health, even if you want to heal your body image or your relationship with money, even all of it. If you want to heal, you want to find your purpose, you want to be aligned on your spiritual evolution, have someone to hold your hand through it and do it all within community, the Recondition Your Life Academy is there for you. That is what I created it for. It's my life's work in one place, and it's changed countless women's lives. And like I said, it's only open for enrollment for 1 week. So if you're hearing this in real time, head to laurenvakneen.co.uk/academy, where you can see everything you need to know about what you'd get from this course. What I can tell you will get is a sense of joy and purpose back, alignment in all aspects of your life, and an inner circle of like-minded women. Really, it's so much more than a course. It is a lifestyle. And I just hope to welcome you within the community really soon. I always say it's like I know it's so cliche, but it's like the butterfly, right? Like the caterpillar doesn't know that she's just fine, right? She's fine, a quote unquote fine. And it's a mediocre life that she's fine with. She's like moving along, eating some leaves, moving along the tree branch. But in order to up level, she has to go into the darkness and she has to cocoon herself in this darkness. And it's not easy. It's not comfortable. It's really freaking hard. But then she comes out as something completely incredible, you know, more than what she'd ever experienced or was able to even conceive of when she was the caterpillar. And so before you allow yourself to go into that energetic death fully to allow for the rebirth, you can't see what's going to be on the other side, but it's having that trust that what's on the other side, if you're following your true path, is going to be meant for you. So Lindsey, let's talk about the sacredness of being single, because I love this topic so much.
Yeah, it's really interesting, just kind of piggybacking off of what you were just talking about, what Krista was talking about. I do have a lot of women in the Sacredness program who come in who are actually in relationship, and they've found themselves in this knowing that though they are in a relationship, they feel as though they have either abandoned themselves in this relationship, or they feel the call to explore what it would be like to be on their own for a bit, to really get to know themselves without the context of being in a relationship. And I just find that to be so telling of just this deep call that I feel like every single woman on the planet has at some point in her life, to walk back to herself, to her soul, to her center. And it's from that place that then we can really be in conscious, beautiful, transformative relationships. Doesn't mean they're easy, but it means that you are in a conscious relationship rather than bringing your unconscious patterns, beliefs into a situation. And it just gets really messy and lonely. And yeah, it's not a relationship, and I've had many that I want to be in anymore. But the sacredness of being single was born in the wake of a period of time where I was single for 7 years, just about. And during that time, I did date. You know, I had kind of those periods of numbing out on the dating apps and just trying to validate myself through dating. But I was quick to find out, actually not quick, about halfway through, maybe 3 years in, that this period of time was incredibly purposeful and was going to change my life if I chose it. And so what started out as a lot of numbing, drinking, going out, partying, going on a ton of dates, settling for poor behavior, turned into this just really beautiful commitment to myself, where I started like dating myself. And it's something that we talk about in the program, and it sounds a little cheesy, but there's an intimacy with self that I think a lot of us are scared to engage in. You know, it's like, what will I find there? You know, what does she really feel? What does she really have to say? Or do I even really like her? And what I found in dating myself was that there are parts of me that I had like locked up and put away and kind of dimmed, because the people I was dating really didn't appreciate those parts of me. And once I like unlocked the box and I started to like sift through these parts of me that I had put away for so long, I was like, oh my gosh, like I love those parts. And it made me sad at first because I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I would ever do that. But then I started to like welcome them back in and welcome them in a big way, like have them lead me places and lead me to experiences and people. And it just became honestly like the most transformative period in my life, and what I know to be the foundation for really healthy relationships I have in my life now, including my husband. So it's, you know, for me, I'm really humbled by the work, because every time we have new people come into the program, everyone's story is different. It's very unique, but there's these beautiful common threads of having this soul call And not everyone knows what that is, like what that feeling is necessarily, but they keep getting pulled. And so within this container, within this community, we're able to kind of name that and feel safe to name that and follow that. So yeah, it's just been a really beautiful creation that came through me, but that is now kind of doing its thing out in the world.
I also think something I've always believed in is, how can you choose the right person for you when you don't yet know you? Is like such a huge thing. And no one teaches us this growing up. Like my mum's really switched on, and she's, you know, I've been with spiritual healers my whole life and the rest of it. But even my mum never said to me, hey, before you choose a partner, make sure you get to know you. I'm fortunate because my husband and I have gone on a growth journey together. Although it took him a while to want to come to it. And it was nearly it was nearly break for a while. And I've spoken about this. He's been on the podcast. We've done an episode together all about his growth journey and kind of our evolution into like conscious union. So I'm fortunate that that happened. But in most, many occasions that doesn't happen. Like you either grow apart, one grows and one doesn't, or if you're really lucky, you grow together. But the idea is that I went on this journey of growth while we were already together. We've been together for nearly 13 years. And I was kind of in the midst of trying to heal myself. And so through my journey towards healing, I had to go on this deep journey of, self-discovery. And then I was like, oh, wow, I probably would have done things so differently. Because how can you choose a partner until you know yourself? And it's so simple, but I feel like this is a lesson that all of us need, not just women, men as well. We all need to hear, and we need to teach our children to really get to know themselves before they choose a partner. It's just seems so simple.
And that's why I think the Saturn return period is so profound. Us, like many people, I think our age or around this age, felt like they needed to, I'll speak for myself, be married by the time we were 27, 28, have kids by the time we're 30 and
Mm-hmm.
And I think back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did my parents got married at like 26. I'm thinking about when I was 26 and how much I've grown from 26 to 30 and then 30 to where I am now at 35. Like, oh my goodness. Like the fact that it's just something I think about a lot. And I always encourage people moving through, especially their Saturn return. I'm like, y'all, there's light on the other side. You will know yourself so much better, and you will be clear about choosing. Maybe it's a partner, but maybe it's just a date, and kind of like feeling through it rather than with your eyes and your expectations and these like kind of subconscious beliefs that you have. Because the Saturn return period is meant to really shake things up so that you can get into better alignment. It's a very serious period. It's not like cute. It's not like, hey, over here's alignment. It's like, it will totally rock your world.
Yeah.
But the purpose is to bring you into better alignment.
Yeah, my Saturn return, I remember. And at the time, I didn't know that I was in my Saturn return. And it was literally 29, like still being, not fully out the wheelchair, going into, flare-ups and then getting better and then going into flare-ups and falling out with two of my best friends, one who was meant to be a bridesmaid at my wedding. And I remember that, the moment that we all have, like sitting in a corner on the floor. And it was in the floor of my laundry room. And I was sitting on the corner. My husband was trying to get me up from the floor. And I was like, I can't, my life is over. Like I'd lost these two people who I'd grown up with. And actually that had to happen. My journey of growth, the trajectory that I went on from there could not have happened with those people in my life. And no disrespect to them. We speak now and I love them dearly, but we were on different paths, and there were so many things going on with my health, with friendships, and that was literally, I was 29. It was spot on Saturn return. And I can look at that and go, that so needed to happen. The universe pushed that to happen,
I think sometimes with those friendship breakups, these friends, especially ones that we've had for a long time, the ones we grew up with, the ones that have seen us for most of our lives, it can be hard to expand into the person that you want to be or the person you see for yourself or to transform when you have people that are continuing to project the idea onto you of who you are, what kind of person you are, what kind of things you do. And what happens, especially with women, is we kind of keep each other in like a check, where it's like, okay, don't get too big, don't shine too much, don't do that thing. We can really be, kind of psychically holding each other back a lot of times. And we don't mean it. A lot of times it's out of our own fear. A lot of times it's unconscious. But I found that too, where I had to allow my transitions and the evolutions of my friendships just happen. And it was really hard for me for a long time because I'm someone that like really holds on to people. I really love people deeply. And I really would oftentimes adjust who I was to hold the friendship over really prioritizing myself. So I think it's really actually a beautiful thing when you transition out of those relationships and friendships and really choose yourself and choose your own path, because you can recalibrate your energy and you can recalibrate your life without the influence of other in a way that feels good for you. And then you can choose to have the friendships and relationships in your life if that still aligns when you're at your new frequency and when you're on your new timeline.
Do you feel like in your journey, and this is for both of you, that when that's happened to you, energetically, like you say, you then operate on a different frequency? And I know a lot of people listening to this have these experiences where they know they're going through that shedding process. They're having to purge a lot from their lives. And it's so scary. It's the same with the relationships, women wanting to leave her husband or her partner, or the woman going, these friends are no longer serving me. Have you found that when you do shift into that new frequency, you then manifest those new friendships towards yourself? Because I've found that.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. And what I think moving to Los Angeles was the best thing for me in so many different ways.
Where did you move from?
I was living in New York City. So I was in New York City and I was in Chicago before. I had amazing friends in both places, but in LA, it really allowed me to sort of expand into the person I was and then have people meet me or meet people at the frequency of my expansion, meet people at the frequency of being an entrepreneur, being a dreamer, being someone that kind of thinks outside the box, being someone that has different priorities than I think the friends I was hanging out with before in Chicago and New York. So having the change of location almost gave me an excuse to connect with people that were actually more aligned for me from a soul level. But I think as far as my friendships go, I had to heal a lot of my mother wound, and I had to heal a lot of me to call in the friends that I have now and to really be in intimate relationships with people that I love and to really be seen and held by people that I love. And also to be around women that are incredibly powerful. The women that I am friends with are no joke. They are doing things that are changing the world. They are the most powerful people in the game. And it's like, it's not easy all the time. I definitely have moments where I'm like, am I meant to be here? Like, is this, oh, they're doing this. Should I do this? There's imposter syndrome that comes up. So when you do magnetize the friendships that you want and have the relationships that seem really beautiful and amazing, there's a lot of work that goes on internally to really quiet that part of you that's like, yeah, they're more successful than you, they're too cool. They probably don't like you for this. There's a conversation that's had internally and a lot of healing that I had to do to be able to hold the type of big relationships that I have in my life. But I feel so grateful because now I feel more secure and more seen than ever in the relationships that I have. And I think my friendships are one of the things that I'm, most proud of in my life.
And I think with the friendship breakups, for me, it was so much about, again, like meeting those parts of myself that I feel like I would neglect or abandon in those particular relationships. At the top of 2022, I had a few relationships, a few friendships, just kind of come to a head and dissolve like within a matter of like 2 weeks. And it was so interesting because I have like two parts of me, Gemini moon, where I'm like, am I a bad person? What did I do wrong? Should I be working on this in this relationship? And for one of those, that was true. But then there's this also this part of me that just knows that my intuition has been telling me something for quite a while. And I've been settling for a friendship or a dynamic or behavior that really doesn't serve me. And perhaps these friendships, these relationships had like a reason and a season, and that's okay.
Mm.
And I'm pretty good at that. Part of me is pretty good at being like, okay, we're done. And so for 2 out of 3 of those, it was like an okay, like this is clear, we're done. And we actually don't need to have this long drawn out discussion. And should we make this work and all this stuff. It was clear to me on an energetic level. And then the one, I knew it was a call for me to step up and to actually be a better communicator and to be more consistent. And I really felt the call to do that because my connection with this person was of value. Like I really wanted to deepen our friendship. So I think when we're kind of confronted with these moments, especially in friendship, we have to come back to, okay, how does this feel? Like, does this feel like an opportunity for growth? And if it's not clear, you don't need to make any sudden moves, sudden decisions.
Mm.
You can kind of be with it. And I think any good friend will allow for that space and that time. Sometimes a pause is much needed. So asking for like, let's take a pause and come back together. You know, it's kind of like it's like a next level thing that I think makes people feel a type of way, but it's actually kind of a relief because then you both get to just come out of the heightened state of emotion and come back to a little bit more of that neutrality.
This season of Reconditioned is made possible thanks to Hifas doTERRA, and I'm a little bit obsessed with them and I want to tell you why. So if you follow me on social media, you'll know I talk about mushrooms a fair bit. Yes, I am that wild, and no, not the psychedelic kind. Not this time anyway. I've known about the crazy health benefits of medicinal mushrooms for a while, especially after watching Fantastic Fungi on Netflix, but I never found a brand that I fully trusted. And then I came across Hifas doTERRA, and I am not exaggerating when I say it has been life-changing. They have medicinal mushroom products to support autoimmune diseases, allergies, hormonal imbalances, gut health, brain function, emotional well-being, musculoskeletal issues, the list is endless. And because they're one of the few mycotherapy companies to actually carry out clinical trials on their products, they've been able to develop their Onco range, specifically for cancer. And potentially my favorite, they have products for children's immune systems and the gut-brain axis. Great for ADHD, sensory issues, and gut support. These have got my kids through this winter of illness, and they've made a huge difference to my son's sensory challenges. I'm swearing by them. Hifas doTERRA mushrooms are not only certified organic, but they use the fruiting body of the mushroom as opposed to the root, which even the so-called top mycotherapy companies are not doing, because it's more time-consuming and more expensive, but Hifas are. Spoiler, you get more benefits from the fruiting body, which is one of the reasons Hifas products are more effective. The concentration and content of their products are also much higher than standard brands, and the company are constantly striving for quality, effectiveness, and safety, putting over 60% of their profits back into research. These products have changed my life, and I want you all to have access to this level of healing. So visit hifasdoterra.co.uk, that's hifasdaterra.co.uk, and use code Lauren15 for 15% discount. Thank you so much to Hifas doTERRA. Yeah, I literally had that for like a year and a half with my oldest friend. We've been friends since we were 2. And it was just, something was off. And, you know, she has now since told me that and this is something that both of you can probably speak to. I reckon you've both been through this. When you're on a journey of growth, the people that were your friends before, when you step into your authenticity, to them, it looks like inauthenticity. They're like, who does she think she is now? And like, all doing all this stuff. And I remember her when she was like doing coke off a club toilet, like, you know,
Truly.
hands up, you know, I've, you know, and that's really tough. So this friend was like, And she admitted like she couldn't see me for who I now was. She was able to see me because we grew up and like I was the sick one and she was like the figure skater. And there was always this, I don't know, like she was this smart one and I was never seen as smart. I do see myself as smart now, very much so. But it was like this, almost like a competition we hadn't acknowledged. And she came to this and she needed a pause. And it was a 1.5 year pause. And my husband, Daniel, kept saying to me, okay, like it's done. Like, why are you still talking about it? Because men can do that sometimes, right? When they're in that masculine, like the logic, the pragmatism, the very masculine energy. And I'm like, no, this one's different. It's not like the other ones that I was able to let go because I knew deep down in my heart that I had to shed that. There's no shedding process here. Like she's got to do her thing. And now we've both gone on a huge journey of growth separately. And now we've come back together so much stronger. And it's beautiful because we are saying things to each other we never would have said and admitting things to each other that before we had that ego around, like we didn't want to admit our faults and our flaws. And now we're like, it's all out on the table, more than probably we would do with anyone else. And there's so much beauty in that.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And on the point of your authenticity will look like inauthenticity to some, I think that is so true and so powerful. And, Dr. Gabor Mate talks a lot about authenticity and attachment. And, when we have the option for either, we're always going to go with attachment. And that's what happens a lot of times in relationships is our desire to feel safe. Our desire to feel needed or desire to feel loved will always trump our ability to be authentic to ourselves. And when we're in these relationships with people that have known us for a really long time, we can kind of be playing out these dynamics that are keeping us small and that are keeping us out of our true authenticity in life and our true like calling and true evolution.
And I so many down. That's a quote. That's a quote.
I did too.
That.
What, the Gabor Mate one?
No, what you said.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've always, I've actually done Instagram posts about this because I have found it myself. And I know that a lot of my friends that are now, like I have a beautiful tribe of, I kind of hate that word now, it's just so overused, but like a beautiful community of like-minded women. And we have our WhatsApp group and we meet up all the time and we all live local to each other, most of us. So one's in California, actually, one's in South Africa, but it's beautiful. And we often talk about like our other friends that we, so I'm quite fortunate. Like I live in my own echo chamber. Most people are like that I associate with now are kind of like-minded, but there is this feeling of them not accepting who you have become as you've evolved. Because like you say, we try to keep, and not intentionally, Krista, you've said this, like we try to keep each other small, not intentionally. It's just, we've been raised to go, don't get too big for your boots and all that kind of stuff. And so we think that we shouldn't. We think that we should live in this place of smallness. And actually, Krista, maybe like what you were saying about being around all these powerful women, there's so much growth in that because you have to then accept that it's okay for them to be good with where they're at with their power and that you can come to that too. Or you are there, but as in you can be accepting of yourself being in your own power.
100%. Yep.
I think this like the fact that we are online now, and people can consume your life from that vantage point. I had, and I know Krista had this too, and I'm sure you had it as well, Lauren, like people hearing things about your life or maybe just how you're feeling and what you're going through, hearing it on Instagram before hearing it from you directly. And I really had to sit with that, like there is just a sign of the times that like, and who we are and what we do for a living, where we are incredibly vulnerable and open, both on the podcast and generally online. And I really had to like stand my ground because it made me feel a type of way. I was like, I felt bad, first of all. I didn't want them to feel like I had, changed or like I had, neglected our personal relationship. But I also really had to stand in my truth that this is what I do.
Right.
you know, and I really actually desire like your just acknowledgement of that and honoring of that. You don't have to like it all the time, but this is what I do and this is what I've chosen. And yeah, it's such an interesting experience now with Instagram and TikTok and all the things to navigate
Really is.
personal relationships as well.
Especially if you're choosing, you know, I am very open with everything I put out there. I've chosen to do that through my podcast, through Instagram, as part of my purpose being helping people to heal. You know, whatever that might mean for them physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is. In order to do that, that comes through my own story of healing. So I'm very open, even down to kind of, you know, my journey into sacred sexuality, like all of it. So there are obviously some things that are sacred to me that I do not share, but most things. And then when people approach me and they're like, oh, I saw that you did da da da, I'm almost angry that they know it, but I'm like, how can you be angry? You shared that with them. But it's
Story
like
of my
people,
life.
mums at the school gate, so I don't even know. They're like, oh, I saw your house renovations look so nice. And I'm like, what? Oh,
I know. Isn't that funny, that feeling of just like, shut up.
you did it to yourself, but still, I don't want you telling me that.
That's
It's so weird
hilarious.
because you share, you're like, I want people to see and be impacted by my work. And then people see and are impacted by your work. And you're like, what the heck?
So true. Exactly.
I think what I did, what I've done recently, I think with the separation that I feel really proud of is like, I think what I was doing and it was in contrast to what I was doing previously. So previously I would share anything and everything online. I would really be in process with what I was going through and sharing vulnerably from the heart, which was really beautiful. And I, love that part of me. But what I was doing was sharing and processing really publicly with the audience before I was sharing and processing with people that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't giving, my intimate relationships the opportunity to be there with me and be with me in my process and to support me as I was going through things. So it was really giving me this false sense of intimacy. I was thinking that I was intimate with people and that I was being honest, but it actually wasn't. It's like I was speaking into the void. And so with this situation that I recently went through, I prioritized being in conversation and making sure that the people that I loved and trusted were aware and kind of were with me in the process as much as they could be. And then the public was sort of the last to know. The public was like the last.
As it should be.
The last of it all, because I also wanted it to feel clean. I didn't want it to feel like there was anything, any funky energy that you can sometimes have when you're sharing something like that, where it can be like, oh, I want attention. I want people to think I'm the victim. I want, whatever the thing is, I wanted it to be super clean and super honest.
I think that's key, isn't it? That we have to, and I say like our generation had it the hardest because we were thrown into social media with no social media etiquette training. I feel like, the younger, like teenagers today, they kind of know what they shouldn't share. They've come in, like we got thrown in like our 20s. And I remember, and I've said this before in the podcast, like 15 years ago, being on Facebook and shouting from the rooftops about like conventional healthcare and all these things that were a massive part of what I was learning and was a part of my growth journey. But I was shouting about it so angrily that I was just repelling people from this message because I had no idea how to actually share that with compassion and with grace. And so I think what you've said is key. We have to process first. We have to heal first. And then we can share in a way that is more authentic, more genuine, more graceful from that place of having processed it ourselves internally. Otherwise, like you say, it's just messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's just funky energy that comes from other people, funky energy that comes from you. And it really puts you in this sort of weird relationship with your audience where I saw this one influencer kind of sharing very vulnerably in process, and it's beautiful in a way, but a part of me was like, oh, they're going to their audience to fulfill this need for acceptance or fulfill this need for validation or whatever it is. And then your audience, I just felt really uncomfortable with the energetics of them kind of giving her that thing, feeding her when we should really figure out how to feed ourselves. And I didn't want to be in that relationship with my audience. I want them to be sovereign and I want them to feel, I don't want them to be feeding me with their energy, whenever we're sort of like connecting on social media.
So true. I want to touch with you both on spirituality, because I mean, even that word, it's like, but let's just use that word. We're all spiritual beings living this human experience. Have you always both been within that world of spirituality? Were you raised with it? Is it something that's evolved for you? Lindsay, can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. You know, both Krista and I grew up Catholic. Before I was Catholic, we kind of bopped around different like Christian churches, but then I went to an all girls private Catholic school and I converted, and so it is. But I never really connected with the religion itself and just all of the rules and expectations around it. It always felt, I was actually reflecting on this the other day. I was thinking about my experience in that all girls school and just like the energy that I would feel on a regular basis, but didn't really know what that was. Because I didn't have an awareness of energy at that time, but how it was lifeless. You know, there was not a lot of life in it. And, you know, what I've realized is that, you know, my understanding of spirituality and being faith filled, yes, it involves God for sure. Have definitely reconnected and redefined my relationship with God, but there's just so much more life, and it's so much more dynamic than I ever thought it could be, because of all the rules that I grew up with. So for me, it's just been this journey, honestly, since I moved to LA and then now back to New York, um, of not only discovering and getting to know who I really am on a soul level, but understanding my relationship and also how I reflect God in my day to day. So, all that to say, you know, it's like a literal day to day thing. And I just love those moments when I'm feeling like I should have the answers and I should know the path forward. And when that anxiety comes up during a season of like great challenge, I really am so grateful that I'm at a place now where I can give it over to God, you know, and feel really at peace with that, and continue living, actually living my life and watching God do his thing. And it's just been so cool.
Krista, what about you?
Hmm. Repeat the question. I was so caught up in God. I was like, I love when we rip on God. It's just so good. I'm like,
I
yes.
know. Well, we're talking about spirituality, and just to kind of go into what you've said, Lindsay, I work with a shaman, a Yaqui shaman. He's based in Sedona, and he said, well, everything he says is profound, but something that really spoke to me in terms of like spirituality versus religion is, so I was raised Jewish, and my family are Jewish, and there is so much sacredness in honoring the ancestors, while also knowing and the lessons that the ancestors have passed down to us consciously and through our DNA, honoring them, honoring their journeys, while still knowing that so much of what they did and chose to do was based on a level of oppression and power. And we can honor the ancestors while viewing it from what God actually is, what spirituality, religion actually is, which is love for all, and be able to see ourselves as these spiritual cosmic beings living this human experience. And I love that, because I've always felt a deep connection with my Israeli Moroccan Jewish roots, such a rich culture that I've been raised in. You know, my dad is Moroccan. He only left Morocco when he was 20. My whole family lives in Israel, you know, with this kind of deep Moroccan Israeli culture, and I feel so connected to it, and at the same time have a lot of disputes, like internal disputes about the beliefs and the customs and so many of the things. But I'm not in dispute with myself anymore, because I just understand what it is for them and why it had to be like that for them. But then I can kind of take the culture and the beauty of the culture and then evolve that into less about the power and the laws and more into honoring the culture and the beauty of that while really kind of settling into what God actually means.
Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation of the journey that I think a lot of people go on. And I think the way that it happens naturally. So you have that moment where you're kind of growing up in the space. It feels like it doesn't fully fit, but you don't really know why. And then you might have a period where you're like, this is not for me. You know, I remember in high school, I wasn't like atheist or anything, but I was definitely, I definitely had like some beef with God. Like I was like, oh, this is what, you know, you're kind of in that very linear thinking where if God didn't give me everything that I wanted, does God exist? And you have to kind of leave the nest almost, you know, you have to leave your beliefs and really kind of wipe the slate clean of what you've been told God is, or religion is, or spirituality is, or connection is to source. And then you have to figure out in your journey to come back to it. And I think a lot of my journey, you know, started with going outside. You know, it was finding the healers and finding the teachers and getting the readings and doing the things. And, you know, it was doing the things of spirituality. There are many practices of spirituality, or climbing the spiritual mountain, you know, it was something to do. And then now it's been beautiful because it's kind of stripping away, you know, it's doing less. It's kind of connecting more with nature. It's basically being more in the human experience than it is being out of it, which is what I spent a lot of time doing, is being out of the human experience with it all. And I'm so grateful that, you know, Lindsey and I have God at the foundation of who we are and what we do in our relationship. And I know whenever I say the word God, there's like a little bell that rings in the unseen world, and everyone, spirits around me kind of look, they're like, oh God. Because when you say God, it's like a purifying element where some people can get really activated and triggered by it. And I don't think everyone, you know, needs to have the relationship with God, the creator, the sustainer that I do. But I really just impose for people to find whatever their foundation for their life, and the foundation that gives them faith and gives them a reason for being and gives them a hope, because it is the most relaxing feeling in the world, you know, to know that you're not the only one that's the driving force of your life. You're not the only one responsible for the success of your life is the best feeling ever. And whatever that is for you, if it's the universe, if it's Allah, you know, whatever it is, just finding a place to rest, you know, your human experience and your human woes, and be held by something eternally. There's really nothing better.
I love it because you do the Course in Miracles, don't you? You've done a lot with that. So my healer teaches the Course in Miracles and journey work, and she said that to me last year, and it really shifted everything in me. She said, Lauren, do you feel like you're running your business alone? Forget your team. Do you feel like you're running it you're alone, and your success is based on you? And even though, like, I teach manifestation, I teach energy, and at that point I was like, yeah, I forgot that actually I'm totally supported. I don't need to do it alone, but I need to remember that, and I need to call that energy in. And that was
That's
so
huge.
revelatory. Like, oh, I don't have to do this alone. I'm supported. Massive.
Yeah, I think in relationships, I also had that revelation where I was like, you know, because I'm now someone that is out of relationship, and I'm at an age where children is something that I have always wanted, and it's always been on my path. And, you know, I was thinking, and I'm so grateful that God or my higher self dropped it in, where it's like, you know, it's not just your destiny, it's your partner's destiny, it's your child's destiny. And it really helped me to take a lot of the weight off my shoulder, to be like, oh my God, it's not just me. I don't have to make anything happen. I have other beings that have destinies with me that are going to co-create this experience, that also have responsibility for making it happen. And when you take off that responsibility that we think it's everything we have to do everything by ourselves, life just gets so much better and easier, and so much like less stressful.
I love that, what you just said about the destiny of the other beings. I think so many people listening will just swallow that all up. I want to talk about your darkness journey before we end, because I'm so intrigued. My husband really wants to do it. I think I would do it. I'm just still in that state of thinking about it. But can you tell us what it is and why you chose to do it? And I'd love for you to, if you want to share, go into a little bit of what came up for you, what you took from it.
Yeah. So a darkness retreat is spending a certain amount of time in absolute black. It's not, just a dark room with a little bit of light. It's not a skylight. It's absolute pitch black. So it's sensory deprivation on a level that I've never experienced. And this one was in the middle of Oregon in a cave. They feed you. So you get food every day, but you don't have any contact with anyone else. You don't have any devices. And you're in a small room with a bathroom and a bathtub and a bed. And so I did this at the end of my relationship, really as that reset, that energetic reset and that time and space for me to grieve the relationship. Just like you were talking about the butterfly and the cocoon, it was my cocoon, my energetic bath from everything that I had gone through in that year. And so it was 4 nights and 3 full days of this, of being alone with my thoughts, of being alone with myself in a way that I don't think I'll ever be able to experience again unless I do a darkness retreat. I can think that we like to think that we're with ourselves a lot, but we actually don't spend a lot of time not stimulated. And so it was really hard at the beginning. The first day I thought I was going to go insane. I was like, why the heck am I here? Why do I have to learn through pain? Why do I do this to myself? Am I doing this for other people? Am I doing this to tell people I'm doing this? Why do I feel like I have to do these things? What is it about me that makes me kind of push the boundaries in this way? And then I let that be okay. And I let that be present. And I think one of the most beautiful things about the process was really allowing whatever was to come up. And I think we say that a lot of times in our kind of jargon in the spiritual world, we're like, let whatever be. But when you're feeling rage towards your mother for something, or when you're feeling like you're going insane because you're so shame-filled that you would do something like this and share it publicly, allowing that to be experienced and felt in its fullness and not identified with or not changed or not shifted is incredibly powerful. So it was a whole journey of feeling and experiencing and being and sleeping and resting and, doing all the things. But I think the number one thing that I got out of it was the learning and thought around how I see connection as love. I'm someone that didn't have a lot of connection when I was really young and almost neglect in a way. And I've always seen connection with other as like my source and fuel for life. And so I would prioritize connection over anything. I prioritize that attachment over my authenticity. And how can I really reshift and make connection a part of my life, but find my connection to myself or find my connection to the creator as the number one fuel and source for me over prioritizing connection with others all the time. And in one of the Eastern traditions, they call it the hungry ghost. And a lot of us have a hungry ghost that is sort of running the ship or running the show. And this is a part of us that is never satisfied, a part of us that is really just creating these situations and scenarios like a hungry ghost. And my hungry ghost was hungry for connection. It would do anything to be connected to people or feel loved by people or feel like I was in that energetic exchange with people. And so I was able to really work with that, but I wouldn't suggest it to a lot of people. I think it was the most psychologically challenging thing you could potentially do. It's not easy. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not cool. It's you with you in the realest way, but it was incredibly transformational.
So you're happy you did it?
Oh yeah. I'm so happy. I think that's the thing. I remember I did this trip to Patagonia and they talked about like delayed happiness. And they were like, oftentimes there's so many things that we do that are miserable in the process. But in the end, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, you go run a marathon and it's not fun to run a marathon ever. But you're like, at the end, you're like, I'm glad I did it. There's like, but you're like, it's fun in your memory, even though it's not fun during. So it's fun for me to think about. But during, I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. 1 hour feels like 4 days. This is miserable.
It's like cold swimming or my cold showers every day. Every single day I dread getting in. And afterwards, every single day, I feel better. And I'm glad I didn't have a hot shower.
Yes.
Obviously.
Exactly.
That on steroids. But
no, the cold shower is intense. I mean, you got to really be like, who's the boss here? My mind or, like who's the boss? That's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
So before we end, the last thing I kind of want to touch on is the power of intention. And you girls are so good about speaking about intention a lot. And remaining in integrity with your intentions and, within your business, with the podcast, with kind of how you live your lives. And I just wonder, Lindsey, maybe you can speak to the power of intention, what that means for you. And for anyone listening who's just heard everything we've spoken about relationships, about finding ourselves, about spirituality, about darkness, about energetic deaths, and intention kind of umbrellas all of those decisions we make.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It always makes us happy just to know that that's felt through our work. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, I learned about the power of intention from Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yeah.
Classic. And it was a concept at the time that I was like, okay, like so like you set an intention and then everything's gonna flow and it's fine and dandy. And I didn't really believe it on like a deep, deep level. And then I was in a session with my therapist, who's also incredibly spiritual and not of this earth. And she has this beautiful way of really distilling kind of these concepts that I am around in the work that we do and simplifying what it really is. And she was like, all you need to do is set an intention. Like, that's it. And that is the key. And I was like, oh, okay. And it really hit me in that moment, even after all of the reading and teaching that I had consumed. I was like, oh, and it really put the power back with me. And I think that's what I had been lacking in that season of my life. And I think that's what intention for me why it's been so powerful. And so whether it's to start the day before a conversation, before we do an interview with Almost 30, before we have a phone call with a potential publisher, partner, what have you, we are always setting intentions. And anytime I consciously do that in a more mundane situation, say, my intention in going into the grocery store is not only to get my necessary things, but my intention is to be in awe or surprised by, or find something that I didn't know I needed, but will make my day. And it's opening up this possibility that I think creates just this joy and awe with life that a lot of us are missing because we either believe that we have to plan it down to the last detail, or we feel like we're just predestined and this is how my life is and everything's hard. But intention really opens up the possibility that, one, you are an incredible creator, and two, that the universe, if we want to reference that, is collaborating with you all the time. And so intention really kind of opens the door to both of those things.
Perfect answer.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I think intention is something that I think you always have to come back to. And I've really thought about intention around, just the self-help work that I do, or all the work that I do, where a lot of it, I was like doing it because I hated myself and I wanted to change myself. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I do work, or how can I eat, or how can I speak in a way because I love myself, and that means that I'm eating more intentionally or slowly. It's not I'm restricting because I need to look a certain way. It's like, I'm going to eat really well because I love my body. I'm going to speak really kindly to my body, not because I want it to change, but because I love it the way it is. And I think when we bring the intention, it can really help us marry the subconscious and the conscious. So we can look at the subconscious and be like, what is actually the energy that is happening here? Is it gripping? Is it fear? Is it separation? What is it? And then bring that more to the conscious mind of like, oh, I'm actually taking these courses because I want to be more successful because I don't think I'm successful. And then how can we find a place where it's like, maybe it's not even courses, what kind of work can I do to feel more successful in general, because I have that intention to feel successful. So I think it's going to be different for everyone and it happens moment to moment. But my exploration with intention has been just really exploring like the subconscious and exploring what's happening in my subconscious when I'm doing things or when I'm acting or when I'm being, so that I can make sure that I bring it more in alignment to what I actually want to create and not what I'm trying to avoid or trying to run from.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the kind of body positivity side of it, or, body image side of it, because I say this all the time, and I, very controversial topic that I've started discussing as someone who's spent, my whole life towards health, towards well-being, going, we're, and this is controversial, but I'm going to go there, we're talking about honoring our bodies. And now we had this like in the 90s, this heroin chic thing. And now we've gone over to the other side and being body positive to the extreme of actually not honoring our bodies, because if someone is grossly underweight or grossly overweight, neither of those things are particularly honoring if they're not aligned with our truth. And so it's about the intention of why are we, like, what is our purpose behind this? And like, what are we going to be okay with? And how are we, like I've struggled with, kind of body image and all that my whole life, and it's been such a journey. And in coming to this place of wellness, it's not about how thin I can get, it's not about any of that. It's about how am I honoring my body? And when we're honoring or making or normalizing any extreme, I don't think there is an honoring or a reverence for the body in that. And I know that I've taken that way further from what you've actually discussed, but I'm glad that you brought that up in terms of intention.
Yeah, the body conversation is huge. It's our physical vehicle for this spiritual experience. And it's such a conversation topic around what it should look like, what everyone's looks like, what should I eat? It's just, especially with social media, because it's this portal to look with our eyes at things. We sort of create such narrative and conversation around something that is so sacred and is so special. And we just spend so much time like in that type of conversation, like what's too thin, what's too, you know what I mean? It's like, right. And everyone is just so different and everyone's experience is so different. But I've tried to unhook myself from a lot of that conversation and a lot of that narrative, because it can just be incredibly exhausting. And then you're kind of trying to fit yourself into someone else's box or someone else's idea or even someone else's body, essentially.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think it's just about kind of honoring the body, whatever that looks like for you, and however your body ends up looking when you are truly honoring it, that's okay. That is more than that is everything. But it's when there's no honoring of it, and it's like, hey, we're gonna just normalize this, whatever extreme it is, because we should be normalizing body positivity. That for me is not body positivity. There's no intention of reverence behind that. Okay, I've got a million more questions and I could talk to you for years. Maybe we'll just do another one at some point. But to end, I do a segment called All About You, which is just a little rapid fire round. So how about we do kind of one each and you guys can like psychically decide who's doing which. The first one is always the same, and it's wellness is. That wasn't psychic.
That was psychic. That was totally psychic.
It was very psychic. Well, for the hard one, I was like, oh.
Wellness for me is like ever revealing itself. I think especially because of the world that we are in, Krista and I, where we have access to so much information, so many experiences, all the things. I've had to get really, really clear about what wellness is to me right now, and not just about hopping on the latest trend or doing what everyone's doing. And I think the most fun part of this wellness journey has been discovering the things that maybe no one would agree feels like wellness, but just finding that deep, deep, deep understanding within myself and knowing that this makes me well. Like this makes me well on a mental, physical, spiritual level. And those are the things that I hold really close and don't feel like I have to explain or share too much.
It's the same for me, that wellness, sometimes wellness is laughter. Sometimes wellness is going and just having the chocolate with a friend, because like you're so present with that chocolate, and you're honoring the feeling that it's given you if you're eating it with intention. And sometimes that is wellness.
Absolutely.
Okay, best practices for deepening your connection to spirituality.
Putting down your phone.
Yeah.
Being quiet, making the effort. I think people just spin and spin. They're like, how do I be more spiritual? How do I deepen my connection? It's like just taking all of that energy and actually putting down your phone and sitting with yourself. One of my favorite practices is to drive my car in silence. So I think oftentimes we desire and crave silence. And it's not, the most relaxing because we have such a visual stimulation and our nervous system is still aroused, but it just provides me a space to really contemplate and sort of let things digest and really let things integrate or be. So finding silence, turning off your phone and actually making space for it. So carving out 30 minutes of your schedule to be like, this is my spiritual time, whatever that means. If it means, playing with tarot, if it means journaling, if it means reading a spiritual book, if it means being in nature, whatever that definition is, making it a priority means making it a priority.
Mm. A book that's had the most profound impact on you.
I have so many, but a recent one that I was surprised by and that I feel like I will just hold close forever and ever is The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. The simplicity of this book, the intuitive format, the channeling is just one that has like awakened that part of me that has like given me permission in my creativity. And it's applicable to anyone and everyone, even if you feel like you're not creative, you are.
I haven't read that. I will have to put that on my list. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Something people get wrong about you.
Let's see. I don't know if this is my shadow or perception, but I think that I have such depth that I feel like that's sometimes the only thing that's portrayed. So I think people would think I'm just way more serious than I probably am. If you looked at my Instagram, you'd be like, what, is this girl okay? And I think I have so much more joy and levity than I think a lot of my writing or a lot of my work that is shared on social media would lead people to believe. So I think people think I'm a little bit more depressed than I actually am.
That was my answer, by the way. People don't realize I'm fun, and I'm actually really fun.
Yes. I'm like, I swear I'm funny and cool. How do I tell you guys this?
I think it's like, maybe that's also sacred because it's saved for your closest connections, and they get to experience. Like, I know a lot of my friends are like, I love this Lauren. This Lauren's so much fun. Like the Lauren that's had a glass of wine, or the Lauren that, whatever, just being out and just can get all kooky. Yeah, so I get that. Okay, lastly, something you did or said in the past that you wish you didn't.
It's interesting to think about like regretful things, because I kind of understand why that happened.
Totally.
Blah, blah, blah. But there was a period of time in the life of the podcast where I felt like I was sharing things that put my family in a position of feeling uncomfortable, feeling just kind of disrespected, to be blunt. So that really taught me a lot, about what a real true connection with my family in particular looks like. And also it fortified, this truth that like I do have a very different job, and there will be a transition period and a evolution of what that looks like within the relationship with them. And it's just been a refining ever since. And it definitely was meant to happen because I kind of needed that like reality check with what I was sharing so flippantly.
Amazing. Ladies, thank you so much. I've enjoyed every second of this exchange. It's just been so fulfilling. So thank you. And I will put it in the show notes, obviously, but just let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you for this. This has been incredible. And I think one of the marks of a good podcaster or interviewer is, how good the guests feel after the conversation and how I just felt really supported. And I felt like this was such a free flowing conversation. So thank you for just the pleasure today. It's been so great. I'm so glad.
Thank you.
And we're almost 30 podcasts on Instagram and TikTok. It's 30 the numbers, and then almost30.com for all of our courses and programs for our membership. And Morning Microdose is our podcast that is, your morning dose of inspiration. It's clips from the podcast for 5 to 10 minutes each day. And I'm on Instagram at It's Krista, so ITSKRISTA.
And I'm at Lindsey Simcik, SIMCIK.
Amazing. Okay, well, we're going to have to do this again because there's so much I want to delve into. We'll go even deeper. But until then, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you
Lauren.
so much, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Let us know when this is out.
If you haven't yet heard, I have just released a free journaling course. If you've always wanted to try journaling but just don't know where to start, or you've been hearing how powerful journaling can be but you just don't understand why, or you want to create a daily practice that enhances your life but you just need a little support in doing that without it costing you anything, this course will do all that for you. It is packed with content that will show you just why journaling is important, how to do it, where to start, and how to make it work for you. It is completely free, and that is as a way for me to pay it forward because journaling really is one of the most integral parts of my growth practice, and I want to give that to you. All you have to do is click on the link in the show notes to get the course sent directly to your inbox. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you. Reconditioned is proud to be working with Women for Women International, a charity that supports women survivors of war in 8 war-torn countries around the world. You can help a woman survivor of war transform her life today by visiting womenforwomen.org.uk/donate.